Hey there, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name's Jen Walker Wall. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, I'm so glad you're joining. If you are a returning viewer, thanks for your time. I'm here today to talk about 5 milestones to streamline your job search. And so the reason I want to talk about that is I think job searching is almost always dead last on people's list of things they're looking forward to. And so this conversation today is part of a series of conversations I'm hosting this summer to help job seekers and professionals, hold space for bigger questions and to think a little bit more deeply about their work and career, as well as to, walk away with actionable insight that you can apply easily later today or sometime this week. And our next conversation after today's is happening next week, and I'm really excited about that. So I'll say a little bit more towards the end of today's conversation as well. So if you are new, make sure you check us out over at workwonderscareers.com. You can learn more about the work that we do, and you can also check out our July Job Search Accelerator, which I'm really excited. I don't know if anyone here has signed up for that or someone who have signed up for that, but I'm really excited for the folks who are coming through and are going to be part of that. And we get started right after the holiday week in July. So looking forward to that. If you know someone who might benefit from today's conversation, feel free to forward either the replay or share the link on LinkedIn. Obviously, we'd love to get these tips out to as many people as possible, because one of the things that I'm most excited about is helping people exercise a little bit more control over their careers. And I know this is something that can feel like it's totally out of control, especially these days when it seems like a lot of things are out of control. But that's why I'm excited to be able to connect with people here and offer some thoughts and insights on making managing your career a lot easier. So let's dive in. If you are here and watching, feel free to say hello and let me know where you're watching from. And of course, feel free to drop any questions as we go along the way. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to also say hello and drop any questions. I will try to watch any tags that come up in the next few days. So today we're talking about milestones, and we're talking about milestones because I think it's one of my favorite ways to help people get more focused, feel less overwhelmed, and be more productive and effective in their job search. And that feels especially relevant today when there's just so much going on and you're probably have other responsibilities that you need to tend to and balance. And one of the things I noticed when I started working with people one-on-one was what the questions and concerns and fears were that people were bringing to me. So people had no idea if they were on the right track. Maybe you have a resume, but you have no idea if it's going to work for you or if it's working for you. The only sort of benchmark people have in their mind is like, do I have a job offer yet? And that's the very last thing that happens typically. So how do we know if we're on the right track? Because sometimes people are doing the right thing and they just need more time in order to kind of get results. So I want to make sure you have a sense of, are you headed in the right direction? Are you, piling these tasks on in a strategic way and pursuing them in a strategic way, not trying to do everything at once, which is also very common and of course very tempting. The other thing is you're probably focusing on things that you can't control. Whether someone else extends an offer to you is actually beyond your control. But there's so many little decisions that are really impactful in this process that you get to make every single day. And so I want to talk about what those are. And there's something about milestones that really helps us shift the focus onto what we can do, what we're doing, rather than sort of like waiting for someone else to do something like interview us or extend us an offer. So all the milestones that I'm sharing, they're not things that happen to you. They're things that you create. They're things that you cultivate, things that you nurture and develop. They're not under anyone else's control. And I think that's a really critical component of this. Another thing that I see so often, and I know I've fallen into this trap too, is just being stuck in research and planning mode. So it's sort of like a little cycle of like, maybe you're doing some Googling, maybe you're on LinkedIn and you do some thinking, but you're not really engaging. You're not really being interactive. You're not talking to folks in your network. You're not expanding your network. You're not applying for jobs. So you have just like a very small, confined process where there's information coming in and assumptions being made and probably lots of fears being ruminated on. But there's not really a lot of forward momentum. And that sort of interaction, whether it's conversations or interviews, is just so critical. It's really it's the substance of the job search process. So if you're not doing it, you don't really have a strategic job search. And what we want instead of wondering if you're doing anything right, if you're, focusing on things that are totally beyond your control or you're just stuck in research mode, I want you to be able to make sense of conflicting advice. I want you to remember what you do have control over. Where are these, where are the steps for you to be focused on? Being able to find opportunities to take action in ways that make sense, no matter where you are in the process. And also to just set reasonable expectations. Like it is unreasonable to kind of consolidate this whole process into hours or even days or weeks sometimes. So this is kind of what I hope you'll see is there's like a scaffolding that can happen here when we use milestones that can be very, very helpful. So milestones give us clarity. So we want that. We want to be clear on what we can do and how we can spend our time. They give us a way to build upon our work in a strategic way. They inform the tactics and action steps so that we don't have to wonder or wait, which is really where I don't want people doing too much waiting in this process, although that's a piece of it. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed, I think this is going to be a good conversation, a helpful conversation for you. And before I dive into what the milestones are, the last thing I want to say is like these pieces are worth celebrating in and of themselves. The job offer that you're looking for, it's coming. Like I don't really sweat whether or not people are going to get a new job. I've been doing this long enough to know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it's a matter of what. And so every single time we set ourselves up for a good opportunity or we hit one of these milestones, we celebrate that. That's a big deal. And we learn a lot in the process. I know no one gets into this because it's a great learning experience, but that is in fact, what it is. So let me just dive in and talk a little bit about the first milestone, which is being able to articulate what you want more of, what you want less of, and why certain opportunities are compelling for you. Now, if you're coming from a job where you're really unhappy, then there's probably lots of, instinct here to just like get out of the job. If the job is, relatively a safe, secure place for you to be, I want you to think about hitting pause on your desire to just like piece out and really think about what it is that would be a better opportunity for you. There's something that probably drew you into that role. And so what were your hopes and goals and how did they materialize or not as you kind of took this job on and really settled into it? Why is this important? If you're going to have conversations, if you're going to have any focus or boundaries in your search, you need to know what you're looking for. And what I find is that people either get they get too singularly focused on like a job title rather than being able to speak to opportunities largely that would be healthy, affirming, challenging in the right ways and like less so in the wrong ways for them. And that's really what we want to look for. So we want you to be able to select and prioritize roles to pursue. We want you to be able to share your interests with your network so that when you're having these conversations, you're able to easily sort of convey what it is that you are looking for and, what you think you might be able to bring, to the table here. You want to understand sort of the common threads. I do not require that my clients have a singular target role in terms like it needs to be the same kind of function or in the same kind of industry. I'm totally okay with whatever my clients decide makes sense for them. But what is always the case is that there's these really common threads. You're often drawing on the exact same skills or experience as you go through this process, even if you're looking at different roles. So having a real sense of like, what is it about you that works for these different roles? That is often that's something people have in common. What kinds of questions do you want to ask as you're looking at these opportunities? Like, I'd really like something more collaborative, but I really want, to enjoy my team. So getting clear on the focus can help you generate like really helpful questions that will move you along in the process and give you a way to sort of what I like to consider operationalizing your fears and doubts by asking questions in the interview process. And it's also just going to give you just enough boundaries so you can start finding target roles without giving you so much constraint that you feel like you might be missing opportunities. There's a real sweet spot and line we have to walk here by like creating enough opportunities, but also not too many. And we can talk about that in the next step here. So it's not just that we want to leave something, we're trying to paint a better picture. And the reason we want to do that is that the rest of this process involves telling people why we're a good fit, asking for help, getting introductions. And we really want to be able to talk about ourselves and our interests and our experience and our goals with ease instead of, feeling like we're all over the place. Milestone number 2 is being able to identify your relevant experience and qualifications for opportunities. This is really so key. It's the key to making your resume stand out online, which is something that people often struggle with. But our clients have a pretty good track record of getting opportunities this way. So a lot of times people come in to this process and they're so kind of almost overeager and try to impress with the breadth of their experience. But what we really want to do is get really diligent and understand what other people are actually looking for. We want to look at those qualifications. We want to figure out how we meet them, what aspects of our experience are most salient, what are they asking for, and make sure that that experience is front and center. We do not want to send someone on like a wild goose chase through our work history looking to see if we can check these boxes. And what this often requires of us is that we get really clear on how our experience helps us meet those qualifications. It might mean we have to put them in a place, ideally on the front page, where people are going to see them. And so thinking through things like that, really taking other people's needs in mind. I like to think of kind of milestone 1 as for us, right? Like it helps us process our experience. But milestone 2 is really about articulating it and having it resonate with a different audience. So some ways that you can sort of start doing this for yourself if you haven't practiced thinking through your own qualifications and relevant experience is reviewing job postings that you're interested in, looking at those qualifications and asking yourself, like, how am I qualified? What is my relevant experience? Identifying stories that you can tell that are relevant for the interview or even informational conversations. Creating a set of highlights or a summary of qualifications at the top of your resume, which is often something that we recommend for our clients. I like the summary of qualification strategy because I think it allows people to be really flexible with their work history and really curate what they're sharing for specific roles, which for people who are multi-passionate is often key. And paying attention to what you're learning. So if you are having conversations or meeting people in an organization or just seeing patterns, you want to be responsive. You might want to ask additional questions. Maybe you refine the sort of stories you're telling as you go through the interview process and meet with different people, and keep in mind who they are and what their interests might be in filling this role. So when I say be responsive, I want to be super clear that I don't think that this is about like twisting ourselves into knots. It's rather about understanding that like we might have an additional step or two to take so that people can better understand us and understand how we do check these boxes and the skills that we bring to the table. And if you're making a switch in industry or function, spelling that out sometimes has to get super granular. We can't assume that people are just going to deduce that we have the skills like we would if we were sort of moving up in a traditional normative hierarchical way. Milestone number 3 is about investing in professional relationships. And I use the word investing purposefully, and I avoid the word networking purposefully. I'm fine if we want to use that phrase, but I really want to encourage you to meet, build, nurture, and engage with people who share your values and professional interests, because I think it can be enjoyable when you're doing it and there's that genuine kind of connection and shared interests. And B, there's all kinds of ways that this can open up doors and help you, learn more information about specific opportunities, make decisions for your career, and of course, job opportunities as well. I always think of having the value here is really about information rather than a job. But of course, that's what comes from this as well. So some of the things that we see, in our job search community, just from people who have like, very different interests professionally, but just community mission oriented people, is they're sharing introductions and having people go through their LinkedIn connections and brokering those connections when possible. Spending time co-working with each other, exchanging information about employers or institutions, or other things that can be helpful here. Sharing events and resources that may be of interest. Cheering people on. I mean, sometimes just that encouragement is so helpful. Sometimes people are reviewing cover letters and resumes and LinkedIn and profiles and portfolios and things like that. So the thing is with relationships is it's usually not that it benefits you or manifests overnight. These are investments that you need to make. But when you do this and you do this consistently, you might never have another difficult job search ever again. So I do think it's time well spent, and that's why it's here. So every time you do it, you may never talk to someone again that you meet, but you took the time to invest in developing that network. And that's what I think is really valuable. Before you find your people and find out where you can find them consistently and have that be really fruitful for you, there's going to be some swings and misses in there. So let that be part of the process for you. I consider, unlocking this milestone when you have people in your field that you can share information with, or who share information with you. When you have perhaps other people, who share your goals or interests that you can go to for support and accountability. And if you're not a job seeker right now, and maybe you're just connecting with people who have the same kind of job that you do, where you can continue learning and growing and developing together, and also maintaining relationships with references and contacts, especially now in the summer. Like if you are job searching this summer, reach out to your potential references right away. Let them know that you're looking. Figure out if they're going to be, in Paris for 3 weeks and not checking email. I think that, you don't have to ask that right up front, but it's just good, once a quarter, a couple times a year, to kind of check in with these people so that it doesn't have to feel like such a big ask when that offer finally comes along. And the last step in the process is, of course, a reference check. I really recommend professional development organizations, affinity groups, and alum. I think that that's the best way to kind of go about finding people with the right interests, right being, whatever your goals and interests are as well. So milestone number 4 is learning to ask for what you need and or negotiate for what you need. So here are some small ways you can do that, because you don't have to wait until you are in the negotiation phase, like until there's an offer on the table. If you get an interview time that really doesn't work for you, you can ask for a modification. You can ask up front what the salary or hiring range is if they're not forthright with that information, although I think that they should be on, at least at the phone screen stage. Letting people know that you're interested, even though the salary is at the bottom of what you're considering. A lot of times people have a lot of stress and worry about like what they can say and what not to say. I spend a lot of my time like kind of helping people ask questions and share information that they want to share or want to ask, but worry that it will turn, people off potentially. So I want to encourage you to think like this is your potential employer. This could be the people who offer you health insurance. This is where you're going to spend at least 40 hours a week. And I think it's okay to test the waters a little bit before you fully commit. So ask the questions that are important to you. Do the research. I've had clients ask about poor Glassdoor reviews, which I think is really bold and brave, but also really necessary. So think about all the things going on right now, and work is either a protective layer, or it exposes you to a lot of these things. So getting really clear on sort of what you're going to get is helpful in my view. There's all kinds of ways you can do this in small ways. You can do it in polite and professional ways, but doing it before you kind of dive right in and fully commit, I think is very wise. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat here. I've got the fifth milestone, which is very related to the fourth milestone, which is learning to walk away or withdraw when opportunities or offers are just not the right fit. I think a lot of times people worry that they're destroying relationships, that, opportunities will never come again, or they'll never be able to get another offer from that employer. But I think that there's, again, totally professional ways to be candid and honest, and that doing that at the right time saves people a lot of time. And that can be something that's deeply appreciated, rather than going along in a search knowing you don't have any real interest or investment in the job. Now, let me be clear. I think it's okay to take phone screens and initial interviews and be curious. But if you get to the very end of the process and you're like, meh, when there's an offer on the table, you don't have to say yes. But you could also, like I said before, ask for what you're looking for, think about what you need. I think that can be really valuable and save people a lot of time and energy as well, because sometimes we're just not going to be on the same page. And that's okay. But I think everyone would rather sort of spend their time, you looking for another job, them looking for the right candidate so that you can move on. And walking away from offers or opportunities wherever you are in the process is something to be really proud of. I've seen people walk away from offers that on paper sound amazing, but just really didn't align with, who people see themselves as, what their values are. And I think that is something hugely worth celebrating. If you want to land a job that's a great fit, then sometimes part of that process is walking away from things that aren't. And sometimes we can do that. We can just see a job posting and know it's not right for us. Other times we're engaged in a process, and it's time to say to people, thank you so much. I've enjoyed learning about this opportunity. I could see myself in this organization, but this role the timing isn't quite right, or the role isn't quite right. And I don't want to waste any more of your time. Perfectly okay thing to say. So those are the 5 milestones. And I would consider, if you don't have the first one of being clear about what you want more of and less of, start there. Because once you get clear on that and you can build clarity in your target roles, then you can really revise your resume. There's only so much you can do to your resume if you don't know what the target is. Like when people come to me and want me to write them a resume, but they have no idea what the target is, I say, like, what am I shooting at? What's my aim? Like I can write a really good resume, but I need to know what its goal is. And I just don't take clients on who can't provide at least a sample target job, because I think it's that important that the alignment between your resume and that job, be evident. So start with 1 and 2 and work your way up. It'll make your conversations so much easier. And if you're struggling with this, or it just isn't that much fun doing it on your own, we're still running our early bird for the July Job Search Accelerator, which I'm super excited about. There's a discount. There's a full session with me. So if you want to learn more about that, you can head over to workwonderscareers.com. And next week, I'll be here with 2 Work Wonders alum and rock stars talking about cultivating the good life in challenging times. So if you could use a little pep talk and insight on how to have fun and enjoy your life and unplug, please join us for next week's conversation. Thanks so much for hanging out today, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.